After seeing the recent blow-up in Robin from Teen Titans again, I've been seeing this matchup being jokingly thrown around on Twitter, with a lot of people coming to the conclusion that Robin is built different, sure, but he surely can't beat someone like Rock Lee who has access to the 8 inner gates, right? I was even seeing people argue that base Rock Lee is more than enough to slam Robin, let alone Lee in the 5th gate, but after watching Teen Titans and properly scaling it, I can confidently say that this is not the case at all. And this matchup is not what you think it is. With me today is Nightwing himself, aka Crisis, go check him out.
Hey everyone, Crisis here.
And he's going to be helping me discuss Robin scaling within the Teen Titans show while I'll be breaking down Rock Lee. For this matchup, we are going to be using very specific versions of the characters. For Robin, we're going to be using the Teen Titans show along with the tie-in comics. While for Rock Lee, we will only be using part 1 as this is the version of Rock Lee that's put up against Robin. And without wasting any more of your time, let's first start with Robin himself.
Dick Grayson is the leader of the Teen Titans and the pupil of Batman. There's been a lot of debate, more of a consensus really, that the Robin from Teen Titans and the 2004 The Batman cartoon are one and the same. But it hasn't yet been officially confirmed, so we're only going to stick with the tie-in comics, guides, and the 2003 Teen Titans show itself. This tie-in comic was confirmed to be canon to the show in the Titans Compendium Vol.2 and sported the title Teen Titans Go years before the baby show for babies. While many people might look at Robin and only see a highly skilled tactical fighter with an array of gadgets, the fact is he's irrefutably superhuman. He can go toe-to-toe against Starfire or drones that can detain her. He can damage Cinderblock, who scraps with Cyborg and Starfire one-on-one. And this is important to note because characters like Cyborg are capable of lifting entire buildings and swinging them around with the kinetic energy coming out to around 2.8 kilotons of force. For reference, this is enough energy to level city blocks and possibly small towns. Robin clearly shows parity to Cyborg, meaning he too should be capable of exerting or withstanding this level of energy. And before anyone says how this makes no sense because Robin is only a human, we have to remember that this is fiction, with the show's creators going out of their way to raise the Boy Wonder stocks and give him aura points. It's not like Batman doesn't pull off these same stunts left and right, many times in animation as well. Now, can Robin outright bully his fellow Titans through raw strength? It's hard to say honestly. In the later seasons, we see that the metahuman heroes each scale to doppelgangers of their teammates, so Cyborg is roughly equal to Starfire, and they could each defeat one another. Cyborg around this same time amped himself with the Teen Titans with Titans Tower's power grid, and an amped Slade totally tanked this 10.4 kiloton attack. So he should actually just be far stronger than Cyborg's peak, who again is roughly as strong as Starfire. Then in that same season, we see Robin matching Slade bar for bar against demons that can score this Trigon empowered Slade. Not to mention the fact that Robin consistently defeats his fellow Titans all at once, both as Slade's apprentice and as Red X. In fact, said unidentified rogue simply represents Robin with no moral compass. So in terms of skill, this is how badly Robin could overwhelm his friends if he truly wanted to. Not to mention his high tech such as ice discs, which consistently freeze enemies, which can go toe-to-toe against Starfire or Cyborg. So I'm not gonna lie, to say Robin doesn't scale to Cyborg or Starfire's best feats, which are consistently within the large town level range, you'd have to have your eyes and ears covered at all times. With that being said, we can now get into speed, which is pretty simple to break down. Even by season 1, Robin and the Titans were reacting to lightning and Dr. Light, with both of these attacks being near the speed of light. In fact, one guide for Dr. Light actually just tells you flat out what the speed of light is. It really couldn't get any more blatant. Robin doesn't necessarily have to be faster than light per se, but just fast enough to dodge them, if that makes sense. He actually reacts to them the most out of any of his teammates, and Robin scales to Raven in terms of speed, as he was able to defeat her and even blitz her on more than one occasion. Meaning Robin is bare minimum reacting at speeds nearly half or potentially over 100% the speed of light. For reference, even just 1% the speed of light is over Mach 8,740 or 8,740 times the speed of sound. And again, this is for his combat and reaction speed, not travel speed. He's not running at the speed of light, but he can't dodge attacks that fast. We have heard of Starfire also mentioning moving at the speed of light, and her sister Blackfire, who she scales to, talked about avoiding black holes, which of course nothing slower than light can escape them. Further to that point, in a issue of the tie-in comic, Slade's daughter manages to blitz and restrain Kid Flash, who should likely be far faster than even Starfire at her best, and Robin proves to be her equal outright. So I think relativistic to baseline light speed is a fair place to put him. That is, unless we explore some alternative methods, which I'll explain later. Now, a lot of you are probably surprised at where Robin is at, since you'd expect him to be much weaker and I guess grounded. But what won't come to a surprise is that Robin's best attribute as a fighter, and what makes him the leader of the Titans, is his skills and gadgets. Robin is a master of both hand-to-hand. He should be an expert of at least 3 or so fighting styles when combining a couple of guidebook statements, as well as being proficient in weapon combat, with his go-to artillery being his bow staff. He was taught by Batman, one of the best heroes in the world, who admits in the Teen Titans tie-in comic that Dick's parents who trained him were the best acrobats on Earth. He trains regularly with his fellow Titans, such as the samurai Bushido. He bested Speedy, an elite archer. He knows alien martial arts per Blackfire's instruction, and he's even undergone multiple training arcs with the true master of fighting methods in this show's universe. With his Robin discs, or basically his own batarangs, we see him having ones that can freeze, shoot adhesives, and electrocute people. He also has pellets that generate smoke to get away, has flashbangs to stun his opponents, and obviously ones that explode. These probably do more damage than his actual punches, so take that for what you will. Anyway, with Robin and his skills, he may have what it takes to take down the green beast of the Leaf, but let's now look at Lee and see if the yappers on Twitter were, yapping.
Rock Lee, similar to Robin, is someone who's trained his entire life. Without the ability to use ninjutsu or genjutsu, he dedicated his life to training and becoming a great ninja even despite his circumstances. This led into him not only mastering his taijutsu, but even discovering one of the most broken techniques in all of Naruto, that being the 8 inner gates. These gates allow Rock Lee to exponentially amp himself to ridiculous levels, with the manga saying that with these gates activated, a user can increase his strength to dozens of times over. This is important to note because even characters like Jirobo are capable of throwing Giant Choji with one arm. And due to Choji's sheer size and how much of the force Jirobo messed up after throwing him, he would have needed to generate over 35 kilotons of TNT, which is enough energy to level towns. The thing about this feat is that this is performed by the weakest member of the Sound 4, who are much weaker than Kimimaro, and Lee with an arguably worse amp is able to press his base state. Rock Lee without his injuries and with the gates more than likely would have done decent damage with the Hidden Lotus, especially when considering in weaker forms of the gates such as the third one, he believed he could have handled Neji, someone who had to outsmart Kidomaru due to him being weaker than the arrow itself. Regardless of the factors and semantics, Lee at worst should be beating Jirobo by the time he's using the third gate, meaning he can use 2 more gates that exponentially increase his power and make the gap even further. Now, the term dozens of times I believe isn't referring to each individual gate, but rather all 8 gates itself. Considering that the 8th gate itself amps you tens of times over stated by Lee, however we see the first gate maybe being a 5 times boost at best, it's safe to say each gate is probably a different increase of power, but overall it can amp a base form to dozens of times over. Sorry for yapping about that, I just needed to note that before people went on to wank Lee and say I'm being biased because I'm not calc stacking the gates. Sorry for yapping about that, I just needed to note that before people went on to wank Lee and try and say each gate is a 12 times increase in order to try and make Rock Lee as strong as possible. We don't do that by a scaling, man, but baseline, Lee at his full power should be capable of exerting over 175 kilotons of TNT, which is honestly pretty ridiculous for a kid who just does calisthenics. he has to be on trend, bro. Now let's talk about what Rock Lee's mainly known for, that being his speed. As you guys may know, he was the first person to get past Gaara's automatic defense, and for reference, when Gaara was a toddler, this automatic defense somehow reacted to point-blank paper bomb explosion. There are actual calcs for his sand speed by this point being over Mach 58, and yet a much older Gaara gets tagged by weightless Lee. As we know, with the first gate, Lee can amplify his power nearly 5 times, and due to the gates being exponential and having different multipliers, we can't just stack like 12 times 12 times 12 times 12 onto Rock Lee's speed. However, it's probably safe to assume that gates 3 to 5 are at the very least a similar increase to that of gates 1 and 2, if not arguably higher. Which is why I'm going to be using just the 5 times multiplier, because we can't argue a higher quantifiable number. This means Lee's overall combat and reaction speed by the time he uses the 5th gate should be reaching almost Mach 29,000, or a few percentages into the speed of light. Now before you guys start screaming in the comments, this is mainly through calc stacking, which is a method of scaling that can be very shaky at times, and this line of scaling honestly gets contradicted within the Naruto universe. You see, in Naruto, it's kind of implied being faster than lightning is really something you approach or reach if you're above Kakashi. The reason for this is because Kakashi, when he was younger, could cut a lightning bolt with his Raikiri while fatigued, but I honestly don't think these guys have any scaling to this Kakashi at all. For starters, the Kakashi in part 1 who's actively training Sasuke and even reacts to him in a stronger Naruto isn't even in his prime, and is currently trying to get back into shape after his confrontation with Orochimaru. We can't even scale this version of Sasuke to Rock Lee because Gaara somehow slips out of 5th gate Lee's grasp. Meanwhile, Sasuke is tagging and reacting to a much stronger one. Lee at his peak does not scale above prime part 1 Kakashi, so I think realistically he's probably around massively hypersonic at best. Anyway, for hacks, Rock Lee mainly just has mastery in hand-to-hand combat or taijutsu. That's really it, if I'm being honest, aside from being able to amplify his power and kind of fly with the gates. Not really, but he can also heal himself with the second one, but after he uses the 5th gate, he kind of just risks his body completely shutting down. He cannot keep this form for very long and unironically hurts himself trying to hurt his opponents, so with that in mind, let's see if Lee has what it takes to take down the leader of the Titans.
Now, when comparing their stats, it's clear in terms of raw power, Lee outclasses Robin pretty massively. The difference in attack potency would be at least over 62 times in Lee's favor if we are lowballing the gate's multipliers. Meaning Robin's staff or punches, even while bloodlusted as if he were Red X, is not going to be hurting him at all. Robin would probably have an invincible effect where he low-key hurts his own hands trying to attack Lee, which Lee would see and try to take advantage of. However, this is where Rock Lee faces a key issue, that being speed. Lee, even at his fastest with the Hidden Lotus, would be hundreds of times slower than Robin, who's reacting to light speed attacks and actual lightning, keeping up with downright speedsters. Meanwhile, Kakashi, who Lee is slower than, is not even reacting to a percent of the speed of light. Robin would be able to perceive Lee's punches and kicks with ease and know to not get hit once or else he's cooked. If he tries to make distance with his staff, he'll quickly notice how physical attacks will not work on him, especially after Lee would more than likely use the gates to amplify his speed, which even then Lee would not be able to tag Robin. He'd be quick to utilize his other gadgets, especially if Lee is getting more and more powerful, which honestly I don't see what Lee could really do. If he gets blitzed and frozen solid or restrained, Lee honestly isn't going to be able to do anything.
And if you somehow think Lee could use the 5th gate to try and overpower his gadgets, Lee's body itself is super fragile when he's at full power. One electric batarang and that's honestly GG's for 5th gate Lee. It may sound like I'm glazing Robin and giving him the extreme benefit of the doubt here, but Lee's speed by this point in the story cannot be light speed. Characters like Haku are reacting to War Arc Lee and Guy at the same time, who people use to say the verse itself is light speed by part 1. But based on this and the Kakashi stuff I mentioned in the Lee section earlier, Lee by this point just cannot be light speed. And even at his fastest, Robin can still react for days and throw a disc of his choice. Rock Lee with one punch should win, but it's not like Robin hasn't beaten people way stronger than him through skill and intelligence. Lee could maybe bait Robin into a hand-to-hand match, but I doubt Robin is that dumb to fall for that and would quickly realize Lee is way too strong for him. Meanwhile, Rock Lee himself doesn't even use the gates off-rip during fights and actually tends to stay away from using them due to how dangerous they are. Of course, when the situation calls for it, he'll try and pop open the gates, but we've never seen him just off-rip open the 5th one. If Rock Lee wants to try and go into the 5th gate, he's gonna have to go through gates 1 through 4 first, and are we really gonna sit here and say Robin is letting this happen and just gonna get hit by a Hidden Lotus? At this point, we'd just be glazing Lee, which I'm not doing in this video either. I try to look at the most realistic scenario, and the best case scenario for Lee is if Robin decides to be cocky and try to use pure hands, which again is highly unlikely.
It becomes even more one-sided if we use that kind of off-the-beaten-path scaling I alluded to. In Teen Titans Go, we see that Raven can casually destroy the sun, and Starfire can just zip around to other solar systems with no apparent effort. In the Teen Titans Go versus Teen Titans movie, we see the original team pretty much outmatch their weird Toon Force sporting duplicates at every turn. So if you would all think the likes of Cyborg and Starfire at all scale to even a casual Raven, who stalemates her easily star-level Go counterpart, then the original Robin is an MFTL starbuster with expert combat skills in many martial arts, and tech that likely scales above his physical stats. Plus, the OG Robin, alongside other variants, all managed to hurt a Trigon merged with his Teen Titans Go version, who needed Teen Titans Go Raven and many others, all combining their power to defeat. So essentially, Robin would be at least some percentage of a Planet Buster in the OG Trigon, plus a Star Buster upscaling from Teen Titans Go Raven. Robin can hurt that guy no matter how you slice it. It's right there. So no, Lee does not fold Robin, especially with no gates. At best, he hits harder, but that's not everything in a fight. Robin, based on the 03 show and tie-in comics alone, wins with high difficulty, and it's a murder stomp if you use the official OG Teen Titans versus Teen Titans Go scaling. If using Teen Titans tie-in comics and the Teen Titans Go show as scaling doesn't show that I am the best DC scaler on earth, I don't know what will.